Well, six South African activists have returned home after being detained and brutalized by Israeli forces for their role in the global Soomar Flotilla, a humanitarian mission to Gaza. Among them is Dr. Zaheera Soomar, who says despite the trauma, she would do it again. Their ordeal sheds light on Israel's aggression, South Africa's growing solidarity with Palestine, and the cost of standing on the right side of history. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Zaheera.
Wa alaikum salam. Jazakallah for having me.
Dr. Zaheera Soomar, you've described this journey as both harrowing and purposeful. Can you take us back to that moment when Israeli forces, the IOF, intercepted your boat, and what were your experiences at that point?
Absolutely, yeah. Look, I mean, my specific boat, Fair Lady, was intercepted on the morning of Thursday, the 2nd of October at 10 a.m. And so most of the boats had been intercepted already, and I had been watching it live and also seeing what was happening, how they were being intercepted, what kind of was taking place, because every boat was, it was similar. In terms of approach, but every boat was unique in terms of experience because boats are different in their structure, the number of people, where you can congregate as kind of a group of people, etc., and even just spaces, etc. So by the time they came to us, around 9:30 a.m., we could already see two Navy ships on either side of our boats, and they had deployed the Zodiac ribs, the black ribs, with about 10 to 12 IOF soldiers on each rib, and they were coming at quite high speed towards us. I know it can sound intimidating, but at that moment, I think in our boat, we were pretty calm. And because we had seen it play out, because we were trained about it, because we knew what interception was like, I was pretty calm, and so were the rest of my kind of delegates on the boat as well, in that we kind of more or less knew what was about to happen, and staying calm would be in our best kind of favor for our safety and for our security, and just in terms of how it would go about and what would take place. And so it was a calm moment, I can say, one that we wanted to have control over in terms of what happened to us and how we experienced it.
Dr. Soomar, you and other South Africans say you were specifically targeted because of South Africa's ICJ case against Israel. How did that play out during your detention? Was it specifically brought up by the detaining authorities? And were you made to feel that you are being received or you're being given additional treatment, brutal treatment, maybe psychological treatment because of this circumstance of South Africa's case?
Absolutely. I mean, at no point did they say that, right? And they won't. They won't say that we are treating you worse or that we are withholding anything from you because you're South African. I mean, no one's going to admit that. That's just, that would be crazy for the Zionist entity to actually say that. But we felt it. And it is a huge assumption on our part, but there are starking differences as to what we experienced versus others. Some of the things were, for example, when we got intercepted and when we were taken to the port, right? So up until the time, when you were intercepted, you were treated as a boat. But once you were actually taken onto the port, you were then treated as either delegations or as individuals. And from that moment, there were stark differences between how we were treated versus how others were treated. Example, in the port, there were many, many Muslim women that were on the flotilla wearing hijab, right? And as I was being processed, I saw many Muslim women from Malaysia, from Turkey, from other countries where their hijab remained on their head, and I could see them go through the processing stations. My hijab was pulled off my head 4 times, and so was Fatima's as well. Our hijabs were removed against our will. We were asked to take them off. We refused because we saw other women wearing hijab, and then it was pulled off our head. I was taken in the detention center, I was pulled aside by women IOF soldiers on 3 different occasions and forced to strip naked in front of them. This did not take place for other women in the port, right? Unless they thought they were carrying a weapon or unless they thought they were of danger or hiding something, they were not stripped. It was not part of the normal process. And in that time, in the detention center at the port, it happened 3 times to me. Then every single time I asked to put my hijab on, they told me, no, you cannot. And I would point to other women saying, but they are wearing the hijab. And they would say to me, but we are not allowing you. You are not allowed to wear a hijab, right? Singling me out. Um, when we got to the part where we were being interrogated by the immigration officer at the port, you had access to Adala lawyers. There were 18 lawyers that were present, sitting at each table that could assist with every single detainee or flotilla participant. And I was taken to a table with no lawyer. And I asked them, I said, I'm not speaking to you without my lawyer present. And they said to me, you don't have a lawyer. And I showed them my arm, which had two lawyers' names written. And I said, actually, I do. These are the two lawyers assigned to me. And they said, no, we are not allowing you lawyers. None of these South Africans were allowed to have a lawyer present when they were being interrogated by the immigration officer. And even though we kept asking, they kept telling us, we will not allow a lawyer for you. When I stood up at after that process, there was a lawyer next to me, and I tapped her and I said, I need your help. They won't allow me to have a lawyer. And she immediately turned around and said, what is this? Of course you can have a lawyer. And immediately 6 soldiers came to me and pulled me away and removed me from speaking to them. And they just didn't allow me to speak to any lawyers. Once we got to the prison, and there was also specific treatment. South Africans, daily people were allowed to be released out and take a shower. South Africans were purposely being held back from having outside time or taking any showers. And then when it came to kind of consular visits, every single delegation's consular or embassy was coming to visit them. Our consular was blocked for 3 days before we got to see them. I mean, some consulars were being seen from day one, but we waited 3 days. And in those 3 days that we waited, we weren't allowed out of our cell at all, not for anything. And eventually, when we did get to see the consular on the Sunday, both the men and the women, all 6 of us, we had basically 3 minutes with them. We weren't even able to convey a full conversation to them. They weren't even able to update us. We weren't even able to send messages back to our family. They gave us 3 minutes, essentially enough time for the consular to verify visibly that we're alive and okay. And then we were separated again from them, right? And other embassies had multiple visits of like up to half an hour, and even were able to bring food or goods for their people, medication, sanitary pads. Our consular wasn't allowed to bring us anything. And lastly, we were one of the last groups to be left in the cells before we were able to leave. A lot of the delegations were able to fly out in the first few days. We were only released on the 7th of October, along with the Colombians and the Mexicans and a few others via the Amman border. They basically drove us there and kind of dropped us at the border. So while they have not confirmed, and they will not, that we were treated differently, there were stark differences as to how South Africans were treated compared to other delegations.
In your statement, you said, until the genocide is ended, we will not stop. What drives you to continue despite the trauma you've endured in the last few days and weeks? What drives you to continue until this carnage, this genocide does not stop and there's a restoration of Palestinian rights?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I come from a corporate world. So I've been working in corporate for the past 20 years of my career. And the statement that says we will not be free until Palestine is free. It's very true. The movement on Palestine and the struggle of Palestinian liberation doesn't only have to do with Palestine, right? As much as it is centered and it is focused completely on Palestine and their liberation, their freedom and their liberation really is central to all of our freedoms and liberation from colonialism, fascism, and capitalism, right? It is one of the biggest um, acts of discrimination, injustice, and just occupational settlerism that's taking place globally in this world, and colonialism that's taking place. And it's a movement that we should all be fighting for, because in our daily lives, in my life, I feel bias, discrimination. I feel capitalism. I feel colonialism in every aspect of my life. As a minority female from an African country, you feel it every single day. I don't want to be in that space. I don't want my children to be in that space. I want a better life for them. And to fight for the freedom of the Palestinians isn't just a fight because they're our brothers and sisters in Islam. It isn't just a fight of justice, but it's a fight for all of our freedom. And the day that we can liberate and free Palestine, I mean, by Allah's will and mercy, is a day that we all feel a sense of freedom from this society that we're in. And that's one of the strongest things that keeps me going. Apart from that, it's our duty in Islam. It is our duty in Islam as Muslims to fight for our brothers and our sisters in Palestine. And we know this world is temporary. We know this dunya is temporary. We know that one day, in the day of Qiyamah, we are going to stand in front of our Lord and we're going to answer as to what did you do? When you saw your brothers and your sisters experience injustice, what did you do? And I want to be able to know that I tried my best, both for the dunya and the akhirah, to fight for justice, to fight for freedom, to fight for our brothers and our sisters, and that we put our trust in Allah for our safety and our well-being, but we fight. We use what He gave us, and we fight.
Dr. Zaheera Soomar, in conclusion, there is, of course, a ceasefire deal. We'll have to see the hours and the days ahead how it, unfolds. And one is hopeful, inshallah, that this would bring relief to the millions of Palestinians and the millions of the global community that's observing this year for over 2 years now. But an important message, Dr. Zaheera Soomar, that I hope that you would share with us and the listeners of Radio Islam International, that although you may have a ceasefire does not necessarily mean justice and the restoration of rights. And it's quite possible that
Absolutely.
post a ceasefire and post relief, people will feel a sense of relief and justify, rightfully so. But it should not allow them to become complacent in continuing to demand justice for the Palestinian people. Your thoughts on that, Dr. Zaheera?
100%. In fact, I think it's the complete opposite. I don't think we rest. I don't think we celebrate. I mean, I think there's a celebration with regards to relief for the people of Palestine in Gaza on a daily basis, right? They do need a break from the bombing. They do need a break from the constant bombardment. They do need a break from everything they experience on a daily basis. And that brings me joy. And I do hope that the ceasefire is honored and it is maintained and it does continue from a perspective of just daily life for people in Gaza. However, if anything, we do not stop our pressure and our political movement and our movement for Palestinians' liberation. If anything, we press harder on the pedal at this moment, because what it's showing us is it's showing us the power of the people. It's showing us how much power each of us have in our hands when we push our governments, when we boycott, when we call for sanctions, when we call for divestments, when we call for complete cutting of ties with the Zionist entity. We can see what this is doing, right? I mean, look at the the 4 countries that sent vessels to us, even though they didn't do much. That doesn't come from a government wanting to support us. That comes from the pressure of the people in those countries for their governments to support us. And so if anything, we can see the power of the people. And now's the time where we double down on that. Now's the time where we double down, we capitalize on what's been created. We continue with the efforts, we continue with the movements, and we don't stop. We do not stop until Palestinians are central to fighting for their own freedom and not other countries on their behalf, until liberation is taken place, until they are free, and until the right of return and reparations have taken place. Until those things have taken place, we do not stop.
Dr. Zaheera Soomar, shukran jazakallah khairan for joining us on Radio Islam
Yeah.
International. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam.
Break from my side, just past 7:37.